The monastery rested in silence, its ancient stones glowing under the faint dawn light. Within the meditation hall, the seeker sat rigidly, his mind swarming with doubts. The teacher entered, his steps measured, his face serene yet firm. The stillness shattered when the teacher declared, "Ethan, you have lost your path." The words pierced deeper than any blade, and the young monk felt his breath falter. Ethan said, "Master, how can that be? I have followed every teaching, endured every trial." The teacher's gaze did not waver. "You cling to the illusion of progress. What you call devotion is but your ego's mask." Ethan's chest tightened as the hall seemed to close in on him. His world, built on discipline and ritual, now trembled like fragile glass. In that moment, silence screamed louder than sound, and doubt, like a shadow, consumed his heart. The courtyard outside the meditation hall bathed in a rising sun, but Ethan's spirit felt trapped in shadow. His breath shallow, he walked aimlessly, his steps carrying the weight of doubt. "Why would he say that?" Ethan whispered, his voice cracking like a boy lost in unfamiliar woods. He stopped near the ancient stone well, the sound of dripping water echoing the unrest in his chest. His mind replayed the teacher's words, each syllable striking harder than the last. To lose his path meant to lose everything he believed defined him. His hands trembled as he gripped the well's edge, the cold stone anchoring him to reality. A flock of birds rose suddenly from the treetops, startling him, their freedom mocking his entrapment. He stared at the sky, longing for wings of his own, yet feeling bound by chains he could not see. The fellow disciple approached quietly, her presence soft like a breeze. Claire offered a faint smile and said, "You look as if the earth itself has betrayed you." Ethan's eyes darted to hers, and for a moment he found comfort in her calm. He muttered, "The master believes I have lost my way." His words echo like thunder in my skull. Claire's expression grew tender, her voice even. "Perhaps he does not mean you are lost, but that you cling too tightly to being found." Ethan lowered his gaze, the meaning elusive yet piercing. The sound of wind rustling the leaves filled the silence between them. For Ethan, every word felt like a riddle he could not solve, and his frustration deepened, though beneath it, a flicker of hope sparked in the dark. Later that day, Ethan sat alone by the temple pond, its surface mirroring the sky above. He threw a pebble, ripples breaking the calm, much like his thoughts. "Is this silence truly peace?" he whispered. The silent witness, seated on a wooden bench nearby, remained unmoved, his gaze fixed on the still water. He never spoke, yet his presence pressed heavier than words. Ethan studied him, yearning to ask, yet fearing the emptiness of silence. The rustling of bamboo carried across the pond, a gentle reminder of the world's impermanence. Ethan clenched his fists, overwhelmed by the silence, desperate for answers. He rose suddenly, pacing the pond's edge, his voice trembling. "Why does the stillness feel like a prison?" Yet the silent witness remained unmoved, a mirror to the seeker's restless storm. Night fell over the monastery, lanterns casting pools of light across stone pathways. Ethan walked slowly toward his chamber, his thoughts heavy, his heart trembling. Inside, he sat cross-legged on a thin mat, the shadows of candlelight stretching long on the walls. "Have I truly strayed so far?" he murmured, his voice trembling. He recalled the teacher's piercing words, the fellow disciple's cryptic comfort, and the silent witness' silence. Every reminder pushed him deeper into uncertainty. He closed his eyes, seeking solace in breath, but his chest burned with resistance. The candle flame flickered violently, mirroring his unrest. "I cannot silence this storm," he said, pressing his palms together in despair. Alone in the chamber, with darkness pressing in, Ethan felt his world unraveling. Yet in that unraveling, the first seed of transformation had been planted. The next morning, Ethan sat beneath the monastery gate, his eyes fixed on the horizon where mountains stretched endlessly. His chest ached with doubt, his breath shallow, as if the air itself weighed him down. He whispered, "If I am lost, then what path remains for me to walk?" His voice dissolved into the wind. The teacher's words lingered like a curse, stripping away his fragile certainty. A bell rang in the distance, summoning disciples to prayer, but Ethan remained still, unwilling to join. His body felt heavy, his spirit unmoored, and in that stillness, despair pressed harder. He remembered nights of discipline, days of silence, years of sacrifice, and yet none felt enough. He muttered, was it all meaningless? The gate above him loomed like a silent judge, reminding him that even sanctuary could feel like prison walls when peace could not be found. The skeptic appeared, walking with a confident stride, his smirk sharp against the calm of the courtyard. Daniel said, so even the master doubts you now? Perhaps enlightenment is nothing but a game? Ethan stiffened, anger and shame burning in his chest. You mock what you cannot understand, he snapped, though his voice cracked with weakness. Daniel leaned closer, his words deliberate. Or perhaps I understand too well. Chasing emptiness only leads to more emptiness. Ethan turned away, but the sting of those words lingered. His pride battled with his fear, leaving him restless. The rustle of trees filled the silence, as if nature itself bore witness to their conflict. Ethan's fists clenched, his heart pounding against his ribs, caught between defending his faith and doubting it. That evening, the teacher summoned Ethan into the meditation hall. The air was heavy with incense, shadows stretching long under candlelight. The teacher said, you will sit in silence until dawn breaks. Only in emptiness may you find the truth. Ethan bowed reluctantly, his heart racing at the thought of endless hours. He muttered, silence is already my prison. The teacher replied softly, then break free from the prison you built. The words struck like stone, unyielding. Ethan lowered himself onto the mat, his body rigid, his mind already resisting. Darkness outside deepened, and the world shrank to the echo of his breath. Every second felt like a weight, pressing against his chest, demanding surrender. Alone in the hall, surrounded by silence, Ethan felt his own thoughts rising like storm clouds ready to consume him. Hours passed, and Ethan's back ached, his legs numb, but his mind tormented him more than pain. Whispers of past failures flooded his thoughts, each memory clawing at him like ghosts. He saw his family's expectations, the endless demands of discipline, the quiet judgment of others. He gritted his teeth, muttering, I cannot fail here too. Sweat rolled down his face as the silence grew deafening. His heart pounded in rhythm with his racing thoughts, every breath shallow. His pride urged him to endure, but his spirit begged for escape. The hall was no longer sanctuary but battlefield, where his own doubts struck hardest. Outside, the night pressed in, yet within, his storm raged brighter. He clenched his fists, whispering, why is peace so far when I have given everything? As midnight settled, Ethan's body trembled with exhaustion. His mind replayed the teacher's riddle, break free from the prison you built. The words cut deeper each time. He pressed his palms together, whispering, what prison binds me? His voice cracked in desperation. Around him, silence thickened until it felt alive, pressing against his skin. His vision blurred, his breath shallow, but his pride refused surrender. He saw the teacher's face in his mind, calm yet unyielding, and hated the mirror it forced him to see. Tears stung his eyes as shame flooded through him. He cried softly, I am not enough. The confession echoed into the hollow night. In that fragile moment, beneath the weight of despair, Ethan teetered between collapse and awakening. The path ahead veiled in shadow. The dawn broke with muted light as Ethan staggered from the meditation hall, his body aching and mind frayed. He clutched his robe tightly, whispering, I cannot keep this up. The courtyard seemed both sanctuary and trap, its silence pressing harder than sound. Claire approached with quiet concern, her voice soft. You endured the night, yet your face carries storms. Ethan's jaw tightened. Every breath feels heavier than the last. My soul is unraveling. Claire's gaze searched his, her calmness a contrast to his turmoil. Storms pass, but you fight them as if they are eternal. His frustration flared. Do you not see? Peace mocks me. The harder I seek it, the further it drifts. The words spilled like fire, raw and uncontained, as if his chest could no longer hold the weight of his despair. Later, the teacher gave Ethan a task: to sit by the old pine tree in silence until he no longer felt anger. Ethan bowed, though inside his pride roared. He muttered, "Sit with anger until it dies. It will consume me instead." Beneath the ancient pine, he closed his eyes, but each memory of failure ignited sparks of rage. He saw Daniel's smirk, his family's silent expectations, the teacher's stern gaze. His fists clenched as if gripping invisible chains. Hours passed and the sun shifted across the courtyard, yet the storm in him grew louder. Sweat trickled, his chest heaved, and his thoughts screamed. At last his voice broke into the air. "How can stillness hold peace when it only awakens my demons?" His words vanished into the wind, but the torment remained, louder still. The skeptic found him again, leaning against the courtyard wall with a sly grin. Daniel said, "So the great seeker cannot even master silence?" Ethan glared, fury flashing in his eyes. "Leave me," he hissed, though his voice betrayed exhaustion. Daniel circled slowly, his words sharp. "You cling to riddles like a drowning man clings to driftwood. Enlightenment is nothing but smoke." Ethan's breath caught, rage and shame twisting within. He snapped, "Better to chase smoke than drown in emptiness." The words rang hollow, even to himself. "No." Daniel laughed softly, the sound cutting deeper than insults. Ethan turned away, his fists trembling, but the conflict within him grew louder than their exchange. The courtyard, once peaceful, now echoed with invisible storms neither of them could calm. As dusk settled, the teacher returned, his presence steady as stone. He looked at Ethan, still restless beneath the pine. "You must break before you can be whole," the teacher said calmly. Ethan's chest burned with defiance. "Break? I am already shattered." His voice cracked through the quiet. The teacher's eyes did not flicker. "You cling to shards, mistaking them for wholeness. Let go." The silence stretched, heavy as night. Ethan lowered his head, his voice trembling. "If I let go, what remains of me?" The teacher stepped closer, his tone soft yet unyielding. "Only what has always been." The words echoed like thunder, though spoken gently. Ethan's breath faltered, his pride clashing with his yearning. The pine above them swayed in the evening breeze, as if bearing witness to the storm between them. Night cloaked the monastery, stars glimmering faintly above. Ethan sat alone, the teacher's words still burning in his chest. "Break before whole," he muttered, his voice bitter yet fragile. He closed his eyes, but his mind would not rest. Memories crashed like waves, failures, doubts, ridicule, his own pride screaming louder than silence. His fists unclenched, then tightened again, as if caught between surrender and resistance. Tears welled unbidden, falling onto his robe. He whispered, "Why do I fear the very emptiness I seek?" The night air carried no answer, only the rustle of leaves. He pressed his palms together, his voice barely audible. "I cannot bear this alone." The stars shone indifferently, but within him, something small and fragile stirred, as though change had begun to whisper in the dark. The morning sun cast a pale glow across the courtyard, as Ethan stood before the teacher once more, his shoulders slumped with defeat. "Master," he whispered, "I have tried and failed. The silence only deepens my prison." The teacher's gaze was steady, unshaken. He replied, "The silence is not the prison, Ethan. Your chains are the expectations you clutch." Ethan frowned, his breath shallow. "Expectations?" The teacher nodded. "You demand victory over your mind, yet cling to control. Peace cannot bloom where control is worshipped." The words pierced through Ethan's doubt like sudden lightning. "Ah." He staggered back, whispering, "All this pain, not from failure but from holding too tightly?" For the first time, a flicker of understanding sparked in his eyes. The teacher turned, leading Ethan toward the meditation hall, his steps deliberate, his voice low. "Your suffering is not in silence, but in your grip on perfection. Ethan followed, heart pounding, whispering, "I thought devotion meant discipline." The teacher paused by the doorway, his hand resting on the frame. "Discipline without surrender is only pride in disguise." Ethan froze, his eyes widening as the truth rippled through him. "Then, all I've built was only to feed my pride." His voice cracked under the weight of realization. The teacher met his gaze with compassion, yet did not soften his words. "You were never broken, Ethan. You only clung to the illusion that you must be whole." Inside the hall, shadows stretched across the polished floor as the teacher lit a single candle. The flame flickered softly, its glow filling the vast emptiness. He gestured to Ethan. "Look at the flame. Does it fight to shine?" Ethan's eyes fixed on it, trembling. "No, it simply burns." The teacher's voice echoed gently, "As must you. Stop resisting, and you will find what you seek." Ethan's breath quivered as he whispered, "So peace is not earned. It is uncovered." The candlelight shimmered in his eyes, and for a moment, the storm within him paused. He realized that the silence he had feared might be a mirror, not a prison. The weight of his struggle shifted, and though fragile, a new clarity began to dawn. That night, Ethan returned to the pond where the silent witness sat as always, unmoved. The moon reflected across the water, silver and calm. Ethan whispered, "You say nothing, yet your stillness speaks." The silent witness remained steady, eyes fixed on the pond's surface. Ethan lowered himself by the edge, his reflection rippling in the water. "I feared silence, yet maybe it is not silence that imprisons me, but the voice I give my doubts." He glanced at the silent witness, who offered no reply, only presence. For the first time, Ethan did not demand an answer. He sat quietly, his breath softening, the pond reflecting his face without distortion. In that moment, the silence felt less like chains, and more like freedom waiting to be embraced. The next dawn, Ethan stood at the monastery steps, the horizon burning gold. His chest no longer heaved with anger, though doubt lingered softly. He whispered, "I see now. My suffering was not from silence but from my grasping." The teacher's voice carried from behind him, calm and certain. "And what you grasp was never yours to hold." Ethan turned, his eyes filled with a fragile peace. "Then I am not broken. I was never broken." The teacher gave a faint nod, his silence confirming the truth Ethan had uncovered. For the first time, the courtyard did not feel heavy. The still air carried no judgment, only presence. Ethan's heart trembled, not from fear, but from the quiet revelation that the path he sought had always been within. The night air hung heavy as Ethan returned to the meditation hall, lanterns glowing dimly in the corners. He lowered himself to the mat, his body trembling with fatigue and doubt. He whispered, "I can no longer carry this weight." The silence pressed in, louder than sound. His thoughts surged, each one a storm, until exhaustion tore down his defenses. He wept openly, the tears staining his robe. "I am nothing," he murmured. The words left his lips with no resistance, and for the first time, they felt true. No pride, no control, only surrender. The walls did not collapse, nor did silence mock him. Instead, peace flickered faintly in the darkness, as if waiting for his embrace. The teacher entered quietly, his steps soft, his presence steady. He watched Ethan, broken and weeping, yet did not interrupt. After long silence he said, "Only in falling do we learn to rise." Ethan lifted his head, eyes wet, voice cracked. "I have nothing left to give." The teacher's expression softened. "Then you are ready. The cup must be empty before it can be filled." Ethan bowed his head again, no words left, only breath. For the first time he felt the weight inside him dissolve, not because he conquered it, but because he released it. The teacher's silence confirmed what words could not. Hours passed, and Ethan's tears subsided into stillness. His chest rose and fell calmly, his mind no longer chasing answers. He gazed at the candle flame, realizing it burned without effort, without struggle. He whispered, The silence was never my enemy. The weight of his pride, his fear, his endless striving felt like shadows dissolving in dawn's first light. He smiled faintly, the first true smile in years, fragile yet genuine. The hall no longer felt suffocating but vast and alive. In the stillness he finally understood, peace was not something to seize, but something to allow. The teacher sat beside him now, their silence woven together like a single thread. At last, Ethan spoke softly. All my suffering was clinging to what I thought I must be. The teacher nodded gently, his eyes kind. To cling is to drown, to release is to breathe. Ethan inhaled deeply, and for the first time the breath did not burn. He felt light, as if the chains that bound him had vanished. He whispered, "I am no longer afraid." The teacher's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, a gesture of silent approval. No triumph, no grand declaration, only the quiet truth that he had finally touched what he had been seeking all along. As dawn broke, light filtered into the hall, golden rays spilling across the floor. Ethan stood, his body weary but spirit renewed. He looked toward the horizon through the open doorway, whispering, "The truth was always within." The teacher remained seated, watching with serene approval. Ethan pressed his palms together in gratitude, bowing deeply. His heart no longer demanded answers, for the silence itself had become the answer. Stepping outside, the wind brushed gently across his face, carrying the scent of pine and earth. For the first time he felt free, not because he found something new, but because he let go of what was never his to hold. The morning breeze carried the scent of pine through the monastery. As Ethan walked the stone path, his steps lighter than before. The weight that once clung to his chest now felt like dust, scattered by the wind. He paused beneath the gate, watching the sunlight stretch across the valley, golden and alive. "This world has not changed," he whispered, "yet I see it new." His eyes softened, no longer searching but receiving. The rustling leaves seemed to nod in agreement, the silence no longer suffocating but alive with presence. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and smiled faintly. The storm within had not been defeated. It had dissolved, leaving clarity. Claire joined him near the courtyard garden, her steps soft, her eyes reflecting quiet warmth. She said, "Your face no longer carries storms." Ethan turned, his gaze steady, voice calm. "The storms were never the world's. They were mine, and they have passed." Claire studied him, her smile tender. "Then you walk as one who is free." Ethan lowered his head slightly in gratitude. Free not from life, but from clinging to it. The flowers swayed gently between them, the wind weaving through petals like a soft hymn. For the first time, their silence felt shared, not burdened, a harmony instead of emptiness. Later, Ethan walked toward the temple pond where the silent witness remained seated, unmoving as always. Ethan bowed lightly, whispering, "Your silence once frightened me. Now it teaches me." He sat beside the pond, still and composed, his reflection mirrored without distortion. The silent witness's eyes shifted slightly toward him, offering no words, only presence. Ethan felt no need to fill the quiet, for it no longer weighed heavy. Instead, it felt whole, like an endless sky. The ripples on the water shimmered in sunlight, soft and fleeting, a reminder that all things pass, yet beauty remains. As the sun lowered, Ethan sat once more with the teacher under the great pine tree. The teacher's voice carried gently. "You feared emptiness, yet it was your doorway." Ethan's eyes lifted, his voice steady. "And now I see. Emptiness was never void. It was space for truth." The teacher smiled faintly, eyes glimmering with approval. The wind stirred the branches, scattering pine needles like blessings. Ethan no longer questioned, no longer demanded. He simply sat, breathing, present in the moment. The teacher's silence said more than words, affirming Ethan's transformation. Together they watched the fading light, not as master and student, but as two beings sharing the stillness of life. Night descended gently, the stars scattering across the sky. Ethan stood at the temple steps, gazing outward, his heart quiet yet alive. He whispered, "The path is endless, but I no longer fear its length." The wind carried his words into the night, as lanterns flickered softly behind him. He placed his hands together, bowing not to the world, but to the moment itself. The silence around him hummed like a quiet song, no longer something to escape, but something to embrace. His journey had not ended, it had only shifted into presence. And in that presence, Ethan finally felt whole. The dawn unfolded slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Ethan stood at the courtyard edge, his breath calm, his eyes open to the vast horizon. He whispered, "I sought to conquer silence, yet silence has conquered me." His words carried no defeat, only peace. The wind stirred the trees gently, the rustle blending with birdsong. The teacher watched from a distance, his face serene, saying nothing, for nothing more was needed. Ethan closed his eyes, allowing the world to move without resistance. He realized at last that stillness was not an escape from life, but life itself. By the temple pond, Ethan sat cross-legged, his reflection mirrored perfectly on the water's surface. He touched the cool earth beneath his hands, whispering, "I am here." The silent witness sat nearby, unmoved, his gaze steady. Their silence merged, not heavy but whole, a quiet harmony beyond words. The ripples of the pond shimmered softly, and Ethan no longer feared their disturbance. For every ripple was simply the water's truth, as his own thoughts were his. He breathed, his chest rising and falling like the rhythm of the pond, finding presence not as a prize, but as his nature. In the courtyard garden, Claire approached with a gentle smile, her steps light. "You look different," she said softly. Ethan met her gaze, his eyes calm. "I am no longer searching, I am simply here." She placed her hand lightly over her heart. "Then you have found what we all seek." The flowers swayed around them, petals scattering in the breeze, like blessings carried by the wind. For once, Ethan felt no urge to explain, no urge to resist. Their silence became a bond, not a burden, a simple moment shared without weight. As evening fell, Ethan walked to the great pine where the teacher often sat. The fading light painted the sky purple and gold. He bowed deeply, whispering, "Thank you for showing me that I was never broken." The teacher's voice was soft yet steady. "You saw yourself. That is enough." Ethan raised his head, his heart steady, his gaze no longer clouded. The branches above swayed gently, scattering pine needles across the ground. For the first time, Ethan did not feel like a disciple before a master, but a man sharing silence with another soul. The truth had been found not in answers, but in surrender. Night settled across the valley, stars scattered like distant lanterns. Ethan stood alone on the temple steps, gazing into the vast silence. He whispered, "I am not lost. I am here." His voice faded into the stillness, but the truth remained, solid and alive. The wind brushed against his face, cool and gentle, carrying no weight but presence. He bowed deeply, not to the world beyond, but to the moment itself. The silence embraced him fully, no longer a storm but a companion. And as the stars shimmered above, Ethan's journey into quietude became a beginning, not an end.